The OECD states we are at the bottom of the financial league right across the world. What does that mean to us? They want to pull down Nelson's statue in Trafalgar Square. What is happening to this world? And a professor states that if we had gone into lockdown 1 week previously, then half of the deaths that we are experiencing at the moment might have happened. All this and more on The Voice of London. Hello and welcome to another edition of The Voice of London with me, Ian Pelham Turner, on ALB UK Television and positivebritain.co.uk. Well, what can I say? What the OECD hasn't said already. The reality at the moment, as far as they are concerned, is that even if we do not have a second lockdown, a second spike of the virus, to yesterday they were saying in reality that Britain is at the bottom of the league table for how we will come out of lockdown over a period of time. What does that mean to the country? Where are we going as a country? At the moment, we seem to be without really much of a government or people looking after our interests at all. So we will show the first part of the Secretary General of OECD, and he states the case quite plainly about what governments have done, and some have done very, very well, and where we have in a situation at the moment where, because of all the issues that we have faced, then this is the reality. We are at the bottom of the financial heap. Let's listen to the Secretary General.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this rather exceptional press conference for an exceptional economic outlook from the OECD. This morning there will be a presentation by the Secretary General Angel Gurria, followed by a presentation by the Chief Economist Laurence Boone. All the material is available online, and there will be simultaneous translation in English and French. For the journalists watching on the Zoom application, we'll be able to take some questions if you use the question and answer button. Please identify yourself and your media. We'll try and get to those questions after the presentations. With that, I'll hand the floor over to the Secretary General of the OECD, Angel Gurria.
Ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, we would usually release the economic outlook in the context of our Ministerial Council meeting with ministers coming to Paris. Of course, that had to be postponed this year. But under the leadership of Spain, who is the chair of this year's ministerial meeting, we will be holding at noon today, in a couple of hours, a virtual roundtable with ministers discussing the economic situation and the policy priorities for the recovery, precisely the contents of the economic outlook this year. Now, we're in the midst of a combined global, very global, perhaps the most global health, economic, and social crisis. And it's simply the most severe any of us have ever witnessed. 400,000 deaths already, 7 million recorded cases so far, both numbers likely being significantly underestimated. Now, on the economic front, the 6% decline in global GDP that we foresee in 2020 is larger by far than any we have projected in the 60 years since the OECD was created. Now, hundreds of millions have become unemployed. And now that is in the scenario where no second wave of infections happens. In the event that it would, this kind of double hit, the fall in global GDP would be over 7.5%. And we'd be looking at perhaps 40 million more unemployed. Critical sector for our economies and societies have been hard hit. Tourism, air travel, SMEs, to name but a few. In addition, global trade volumes, which were already stagnating, before the crisis, we didn't have a wonderful time. We were in a slowdown. We were already, in some cases, negative growth in some countries, etc. And then the COVID hit. So trade was already stagnating before the outbreak. And we expect it now to contract anywhere between 9, 11, perhaps 12% for the year of 2020. Now, throughout this crisis, I've stressed that presenting the problem as a choice between lives and livelihoods, meaning a choice between health and the economy, is a false dilemma. If the pandemic is not brought under control, there will be no robust economic recovery. Our governments deserve credit for these decisive actions that they have taken to contain the outbreak. In a few commendable cases, that meant testing, tracking, tracing from the very outset. But most countries, however, were compelled to resort to lockdowns of varying degrees. This meant that health workers were left to handle the waves of infected people. And I have to say here, we owe them a huge debt of gratitude for their tireless and selfless efforts. And we'd like to render homage to them. As a result of these strong containment efforts, the infection rate has fallen sharply in most OECD countries and in many others that followed these trends. In fact, containment measures are now being eased. Now, the need for skillful policy action is now equally important as it was during the first phase of the crisis. Policymakers moved decisively to cushion the blow to the economy while it was placed in what we could call an induced coma. But they now face the daunting challenge of quickly and completely reviving the patient. The policies put in place now will shape our economies for decades. I would like to emphasize 3 points that seem relevant. First, policies need to mitigate the inequalities that are being worsened by the crisis. We know that many of the worst off and the most vulnerable people are being hit.
Very meaningful words from the Secretary General of OECD. Very frightening words as well for Britain at the same time. And one of the outcomes of what the OECD was saying yesterday was that how far should we go into Brexit talks at the moment, and how should we not perhaps come in some form to hold on to some European contact as well, because that might sort of help us. Now, they are predicting, the OECD are predicting that we will be at 11.7%. That is the largest amount of fall, and really will give us such a really deep depression that not even seen during the Second World War. So my feeling today at the moment is, how are we going to deal with this? How is the government going to deal with this as well? And I hope at long last that the government is listening to organizations like this, who in reality are looking at it from a global perspective. I don't want to see Britain go down the tubes because of political dogma. I really don't. I want Britain to win. And we move away from this topic and to Professor Neil Ferguson. Now, Professor Neil Ferguson was part of SAGE, which is the organisation which actually advises the government on strategies on how to look after lockdown and all the different procedures attached to it. Now, yesterday he came out with a shock report when he was talking to some parliamentary committees on the subject of, were we too late in lockdown? His verdict, and it's a verdict that we should all listen to, was yes, we were far too late, and that if we had actually gone into lockdown the week before, and we should have been prepared for this, and we were not, if we had been there a week before, then perhaps half of the deaths that we are seeing right now might have not have happened. Now, this is a shocking opinion. And when Boris Johnson was approached about this yesterday, he didn't even want to talk about the subject at all. We do. At the Voice of London, we constantly listen and constantly talk about what is going on. What is the real truth that is actually happening at the moment in Britain itself? So I think it's a terrible shame that this might have happened. I get a feeling that in reality, Boris Johnson and the government were much more content to focus on Brexit, and they weren't really looking at what were the effects of this coronavirus at the very, very start. We have filmed reports that Matt Hancock, who was the Health Secretary, was saying that at the very, very start of this in January, this wouldn't affect this country, this virus wouldn't affect this country. And really, Boris Johnson was actually sort of stating that as well. How wrong were they? So I just hope at the moment that we continue to be extremely careful right now, and that we actually, at the end of this, as the government has said as well, that we find out who really was involved, why were these decisions made, and hopefully would never be made in a pandemic situation again. So we move on from this to Black Lives Matter. It's taking up all our news time this week as well, and it's very important. I understand that. I support Black Lives Matter. But I'm starting to worry about who is going to be pulled down next. And Sadiq Khan has apparently got a report and a list of potential statues that may have to be removed. And guess what? Admiral Lord Nelson on top of the column in Trafalgar Square may be one of the candidates now of being removed from his plinth. Well, for me, this is an iconic part of London. It's where a lot of tourists come to actually see the statue. They come to sort of capture the ambience of Trafalgar Square at the same time. Are we going a step too far? Are we going a step too far now is the question I would say. Because don't forget, when lockdown finishes finally, one of the few actual businesses in this country that will actually help us come back into prosperity again is tourism. And if we start removing all the statues, all the things that tourists want to come and see, what's next? Buckingham Palace? I've no idea. There may be some connections there as well. Then the reality is, then I think we are going too far. For me, we had a conversation yesterday on the Voice of London where we were talking to a business expert, Michael Spooner, and really the effects that I want to see is how to highlight black people in this country. But pulling down statues, I think we're going a step too far. That's my take on it. And finally, for the first half of the show, I really want to show a video that I think is the most responsible video that I've seen so far about the Black Lives Matter demo in London. Police were being chased by crowds and they were throwing things at them, and police were having to move back from there. And then you see young girls, young people stopping this happening. They were the types of people I want to see on these demonstrations as well. They were trying to stop, black girls were trying to stop this stupidity. Yes, you can demonstrate, But to start throwing things at the police, no. I don't believe in this at all. And I think the reality is at the moment, looking at these videos, looking at those images, I am proud of the people who tried to stop the crowd throwing items at the police. At the end, over the last weekend, 9 police officers were in hospital because of this. They don't deserve this either. I understand the anger of the situation, but in my world, and I talk to a lot of police officers as well, I work a lot with the Black Police Association in the past, my feeling is you cannot have situations like this happening where these types of events are being taken over by extremists. This for me is not Black Lives Matter. This is just extremists trying to have a go at the police. So we're now going to go for a break. It's Carers Week this week in Britain, and we're going to have in the second half of the show 2 carers who have created such great feelings, such great hope, such great happiness, such great success in the past few years with their organisation in Luton, just outside London. So we're going to take a short break and we will see you back shortly. Stay with this show. Well, now we have something much more important, much more positive to talk about. It's carers this week in Britain, and we have 2 wonderful carers from an organisation called Meaningful Education. Now, this is where I might slip up. So I'm going to get their names right first. One lady is Albanian, and that's Regata Armitage.
Armitage, yeah.
Great. Oh. And we have Claire Coppelson as well?
Yes.
Well, that's the hardest bit for me to actually talk about now, to actually sort of say the names right. Now, you're with an organisation called Meaningful Education. So tell me, first of all, what does Carers Week mean to you, first of all?
Okay, so my background, and with Roberta as well, with her background, we have a very long demonstrated history of working within health and social care. Whether that be we've been carers or activity coordinators. And so we're very passionate about supporting not just professional carers, but there's thousands of unpaid carers also caring for loved ones and family members at home. So we like to raise awareness, and we provide many kind of training and educational courses in teaching carers to provide best practice within their sector. And we also teach at a community college, which is a carers academy, to enable people to become carers, so coming into the industry. So we feel very passionate about good quality care standards, and you know, making sure that people are in the profession for the right reasons, because you know that's really important to have, you know, that caring nature and to have compassion and dedication, because it's a challenging job at times.
In regard to it, I mean, obviously it's a question, we are an Albanian television channel as well. How important is it for Albanians to be seen to be doing positive things? And it's one of my things that I champion more than anything, because I love Albanians, and I think Albanians really need to sort of highlight a lot more the good things that they do. But how important is it for you as an Albanian lady as well to actually work within the care system?
In general, being
Yes.
from the Albanian background, having Albanian roots is very, very important to me. But as we have conversations with Claire all the time, I've always stressed that we haven't actually been here long as a generation, or as the Albanian people, for example, because a lot of other countries and a lot of other cultures have been here longer than us. And I feel it's so important to put out positivity, not just in care, but in all the other areas of our lives, and to excel and to be the people that we are, not only back home, but to actually show it here. Because in our culture, caring for someone is very, very, very important to us, as well as it is in the English culture. But for us, it's the hospitality aspect of it. When someone comes into your home and someone's in your life, you care for them, you look after them. So it's really important in our culture. Not in general. We can't say that it's not in general, but it's embedded into us.
I totally agree. I mean, I think when I first met the Albanian community probably 2 years ago now, it feels like a family to me now, quite honestly. It really does. And I think one of the reasons why I promote Albanians across the world now is that I see the values, it's what I call the Albanian DNA. You have so much success stories to talk about, family values, exactly that at the same time. So I think it is important to, partly when we are doing interviews like this, is to actually show that there are 99% of Albanians in Britain are doing great things. They're doing positive things. They're bringing value to the country as well. So you've done all sorts of things. So you've got this book on your lap. Show us the book. Tell us what this is all about. Activity Gurus. This is fabulous.
So there's a little bit of kind of story to this. So obviously we was very passionate about doing this book, about raising awareness of our work and how we can connect and relate to other people within this industry, and also to help people as well. So the book is predominantly, it's kind of half biography, so we share our insights into our work and how it's affected us and what's worked well for us and what hasn't always worked so well. And then the other half of the book is about teaching people how to provide daily activities that are going to provide meaning and stimulation to people's day. And there's lots of different activity ideas in here and lots of information. And one of my favourite chapters, and I know it's yours as well, Roberta, is dignity, because we do lots of work around dignity.
Right.
And in fact, we do talk about dignity within culture and how to preserve people's dignity.
Absolutely, yeah.
And what dignity means to us as an individual. And it's really important when you are providing care and support to somebody that you are mindful of how to preserve a person's dignity.
Yeah. So you talk about how perhaps things in your past started you on this path. So tell us a little bit, the two of you, about what actually got you into caring in the first place. What were the things that you experienced?
So for me, it was, I had a career change because I needed to kind of be based more locally because I was working quite nationally at the time. And my mum actually became ill with cancer.
Okay.
So I was working full-time in dementia care, and I was also being a carer to my mum during her treatment.
Yeah.
So it taught me two things really. One, the experience I had as a professional carer, but then on the other side, what it means to be a carer in my personal capacity. And it was a completely different experience. So I think that inspired me to want to go on to help and support others, where I can. I went on to become a manager and work within this sector. I've set up numerous health and social care projects. Myself and Roberta then kind of came out of our industry to set up our own community interest company, where we can champion education in the community and for professionals, but also, be in the community providing projects and support where we can. So that's kind of the inspiration and the motivation behind it.
Yeah. And Roberta, what's your backstory? What brought you involved?
Actually, we met quite we met and then went straight into this.
Yeah.
But that's
Really?
but that's sort of the end story of that. But I went when I was in university. I had something to do. I was looking for something to do, and I went into dementia care.
Okay.
Didn't really know much about it. Went into it and completely. I was engrossed into it for about 2 years, and that's when I met Claire in the whole process. But before that, I was working with young girls and in mental health wards during that time. So the care aspect was always there from a mental health point of view.
Yeah.
And I just thought it's so important not to only look after somebody, but after their mental health and see what's missing, what are the gaps that we can fill, and we can then help people, whether it's through our programs, our services. And we were on the same path when we met, and it's like, okay, why don't we just do something about it then?
Absolutely. So, if I had a magic wand and I can give you anything to actually create the best caring operation in Britain, what are the things you'd be looking for?
One of our kind of dreams has actually been to open the first Carers and Activity Coordinators Academy. Because if you look at the industry, for instance, taking activities, for instance, just as a highlight, I feel that there needs to be more emphasis on the activities that are provided. Because, for instance, dementia, if you can provide a good level of stimulation day to day for the people that you're caring for and supporting, it can actually help to slow the progression of dementia down. So activities are really important to a person's day, and I don't mean, you know, constantly playing games and quizzes and things like that. It's about what brings meaning and purpose to a person's day, providing variety. So I know that we've talked about this many times, but it'd be really good to have, you know, like a hub where we can inspire people to become activity coordinators and to train, you know, carers as well. So that would be our little goal, wouldn't it?
Do you know, I remember a little while ago, and I'm sure it was tied into dementia as well, but they were scene makers, and so they actually recreated a room of the 1940s, 1950s, where people could go into, and it reminded them, and it seemed to bring out, and it's like sort of singing some of the old songs and newsreels and so forth, and it seemed to bring out memories more than anything. I mean, my mother had dementia, so I know how hard it was for her, you know, and how she deteriorated so quickly, you know, over a period of time, and how she was asking the same question time after time after time. And she would fall asleep for a second and wake up and see me again and be surprised I was in the room again. So I remember all those things as well. So you have all sorts of things that you're doing at the moment. I mean, there's so much to talk about, folks, this afternoon, you know, which is great. You're going to make great interviews, I think, this afternoon as well. So tell me, activity gurus.
Yes.
That's great. And really, you call it a journey to facilitate meaningful activities in social care, which is quite a mouthful, really.
It is.
So what other things are you sort of talking about in the book? What type of things do you feel work well?
We talk about religion, culture,
And how important they are.
Yeah.
Our main aspect in the book are core needs, because we all have core needs, but it's just a matter of what are they. So we cover all of the core needs in there, but specifically what it would mean to do certain things for certain people, and if you can't figure that out, then we give you the tools in there to figure that out for the person you're caring for. We find it helps activity coordinators, whether that's professionally, but also people who are just caring for their loved ones on a day-to-day basis. We've tried to make it a light read. We put some funny stories in there of our failures, our great times. It's quite good, because what it shows is that we've grown from a point of starting out to where we are, and not just with the organisation, because we mention the organisation every now and then, but as individuals in what we're doing, to show people that, you know, it doesn't matter whether you're failing or not, because we did, you know, quite early on.
It was quite interesting, actually, because I remember when my very first week starting in dementia care, and I hadn't had any training, and I lacked knowledge on the illness, and I was literally thrown in the deep end. And I talk about that experience in the first kind of 2 chapters, and it was such a unique experience, but it was one that I learned from very, very quickly, and I applied myself differently, like going forward. And I think that kind of shock for me going into the system, having to learn and having to adapt so quickly, I searched so many kind of libraries, looking for training courses, looking for things that could help me in my role. And I read lots of amazing things, but never something I was looking for that really helped me. I wanted to know kind of what it was like to work in this industry, how people coped with the role themselves, and I never found it. And so that's the beauty of this book. So we wrote basically what we was both looking for, and we hope that it brings education and awareness to those new coming into this industry as well, because I think it's really important that you're aware, you know, of the role itself and the demand it can have on you.
Yeah. And I know, I mean, you've done some very important work. So tell me a little bit about this crisis response for Grangeville. So tell me about, you know, what you've done with that, because that sounds very interesting.
Yes, so during our time as directors at Meaningful Education, we work predominantly across Bedfordshire and in London, and we was working with another organisation at the time, and you know, it was absolutely dreadful, the tragedy that had happened, and from, you know, within, I think it was like 48 hours from when it happened, you know, we was approached, and
After all the emergency care had been in, obviously then when people were placed within the hotels and different accommodations.
So that were you actually working with the victims themselves? Or?
yes,
We
yes,
were,
and
yeah, for a good nearly 2 years.
2
I think.
years, yeah. And at the beginning, we was based doing outreach work at the base of the tower, supporting victims of being in the fire, and those that are bereaved, supporting those that are still searching for their loved ones and their family members.
Because
so it was,
they were still out at that
Yeah.
time. They weren't, even if they had a place or they were placed somewhere, they were still at the tower at 2-3 in the morning.
A question, can you emotionally detach yourself from something like that, or does that really affect you as well?
I mean, we're human beings, so I think it would always, something on the magnitude of that, I think it does impact
So
on you.
would you take it home with you at night? Because this is always the fear.
Yeah,
You know what, we've been asked that a lot actually. And the best thing was that we worked together.
yes,
And because it was in London, we used to have about, I would say, maximum 40-minute drive back,
yeah,
or maybe an hour's journey on a train, here and there. And we would talk to each other, or we would disappear off into our own worlds, into headphones. But we knew that we had, I would say, the comfort of each other, knowing that we can talk through this. And, you know, if something's affected us, we definitely can talk about it, talk it out with one another, say, this is what's happened, this is what I'm going through, I had this incident today, I want to know why. And obviously we do that role on a day-to-day basis with the organisation, so it was a bonus for us to have each other. It's definitely affected a lot of other people that worked with us as well, but on a personal level, we did have one another.
I think it's also important that you develop self-awareness of how you are feeling, and potential triggers and coping strategies. And I know that one thing that worked well for both of us actually was the fact that we used to kind of just switch off sometimes and listen to music. In fact, one of the things that we actually did do on the way home sometimes is we used to listen to classical music, and that's because sometimes when you're hearing spoken words for hours on end, sometimes you don't want to hear words, you just need to switch off and you need to relax, and so that was quite unique. So it was quite different for us, wasn't it?
Was it?
Because it's not our normal music?
It's really not, no. And we would, when the anniversary comes around, we try and do as much as we can. I know this year we can't do much, but we do go and visit, and we do see the people we were working with, and it's quite tough, but it's self-awareness and having one another is what saved us through that.
So what type of support can you offer them? When you're talking to a victim that's gone through what they went through, how can you actually physically help them?
So a lot of it is around listening first and foremost, and talking therapies. We did a lot of kind of mental health and emotional support and bereavement support.
We also did activities during the day, which we didn't actually say anything about, just thinking. During the day we did, with the families and the children, we did hold activities with our partnering organisation at the time. What we would do is offer just all sorts of activities. Kids will come in, parents come and join in, and it would just take their mind off things. And also at the same time, whilst they were doing the activities, they would talk to us.
Yeah.
So it was really good. So it does go back to activity and keeping the brain active and keep going, and the talking therapies worked really well.
I think with the activity side of things as well, sometimes it's so hard to sit and open up. And you have to be comfortable, confident in the person that you're sharing that information with, because when we do talk about things that are very emotional to us, we put ourselves in a vulnerable position. So it was really important to make people feel comfortable and supported and listened to. And like Roberta said, with the children, young people, when we worked with those, we used activities, so they would relax into the activities, and then there's no pressure. Sometimes they would talk about things and sometimes they wouldn't, but it gave them that ease into it. They would naturally talk about what they was thinking or feeling or going through, and I think it really did make a difference, and we still get people, contacting us saying, oh, when are you going to come and see us? And you create a nice bond with people. It's something that I think we will never forget.
Yeah,
and I know it's coming up for the 3rd year anniversary this Sunday, and I do feel quite emotionally attached, coming up to this anniversary, and I have such emotions and attachments to the work that we did. So yeah.
Those experiences, did it teach you things about yourself?
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing we will be willing to share is that our reaction to things, for example. Claire laughs because she'll react instantly, and I catch up about a week and a half later. So by the time she's over it, I'm like, no.
Yeah. I'm a very empathetic person and a very caring person, so I will feel things quite impactful very instantly, and then I obviously, when I'm out of work, will share that with Roberta, and Roberta's kind of
I'm more of a
reserved.
Yeah, reserved, but in the sense of we're in the moment, so let's deal with what's going on, emotions later sort of person.
Yeah.
So emotions will catch up to me as I start to think about it, the situation's out of like the danger zone, and then that's when it will start to catch on.
And you do have to be, when people are going through those types of things, in my past, I've been a journalist 54 years, and at the very start of my career, a lot of my work was if there'd been an accident. In fact, I worked for a newspaper in West London where there'd been an air crash, and we had to go in and try and get the photographs of the dead cabin crew. And one house that had actually got to before the police had to tell them that their child was dead. And so you remember those things, don't you, as well? And you try to sort of, I think it's very important, as you're experiencing now, that it's the hardest thing in this world sometimes to actually do a job, do it professionally, but not encroach on people's emotions as well.
Yeah, I think it is very important, as you said, and I think in your professional capacity, we're very good at being trained to be professional and to withhold our kind of thoughts and our own emotions back because we're there to do a job and to make sure that we safeguard and support those individuals that we're there to do that for. So, you know, it's once you come out and then you're in your personal capacity and you debrief and you talk about these things, and it's like with anything in life, it's so important to talk.
Absolutely.
And just to look after your mental health and your physical health, your well-being.
Do you cry at times?
I think we've cried many times.
The question is, who doesn't, you know?
Yeah.
Who doesn't? And if you tell me you don't, then I'll be very shocked.
I cry all the time. I don't mind.
I think it's a natural thing.
Absolutely.
Children cry when they're babies, when they want things. I mean, it's so natural that's a way of communication.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah.
So we come on to you were helping a knife victim recently as well. So tell me all about this this type of work that you're doing with mental health and knife gangs as well. Tell me about what's going on there.
Yes, we are busy, aren't we, Rebecca?
When you tell us one by one, you're like, oh yeah, we are busy. Just don't realise that.
So we have volunteered our time on multiple projects and services, and it was our very first shift. Volunteering.
We had training, and then we had our very, very first shift on board. We do support the ambulance service, so it was very.
So is this in Luton or is it in London or?
This was in Luton.
It was in Luton.
Okay.
We were actually originally we were brought on because of our work with Grangeville, and they wanted some mental health and emotional support and training to go on with the other staff and the other volunteers that were on board. And it was our very first shift, and we weren't expecting much, but apparently we had the busiest night ever. And I think it's always once we're on, it happens.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it was kind of, so what it is, it's an SOS service whereby we provide support, whether that be medical first aid, whether that be emotional or mental health support, and we was volunteering on shift, and they said it's not been very busy at all for months. And you get the odd call to like the nighttime economy, so you know, restaurants, pubs, clubs and things where people might have fallen over and grazed themselves or cut themselves, so very kind of very minor call outs. And
we had 2 or 3 before the main incident, didn't we?
We had 2 call outs before. So I went to one and you went to another.
We were in other directions.
And I got called to, in fact I witnessed people going into a chicken and chip shop, and they shut the door and they assaulted an individual in there very badly. So
and then from that incident, one of the boys ran away. One of the guards jumped to catch him and completely grazed his knee. So I went in that direction.
Gosh.
She
I
went
went to the assault because the gentleman was unconscious, and so we was doing our medical help there, and then we got back to our kind of transport, put the kit down, kind of disinfected and cleaned everything up to put new fresh kit into the bags, and I just sat down and I looked over and I just remember this man being held up by another man, screaming at me, like asking me to come towards them, and then I just remember looking and just seeing he was absolutely covered in blood.
Gosh.
And I instantly knew that this was something very serious, and I shouted to Roberta, to grab the bags, and we literally ran over, and as we got to the gentleman, he had been severely stabbed in the neck.
Gosh.
It was quite awful.
It was a really bad injury, and he was bleeding out dramatically. It severed one of his major arteries in his neck, and we knew that time was of the essence.
Absolutely.
And you just kind of go into overdrive, and it was.
You don't know what's going on after, as in like you're in autopilot.
Yeah.
You don't know what you do afterwards. You just think, you know then what happened from A to Z. But in that moment, you know, we just
It was very intense, but we was really relaxed.
yeah, we were even at one point we looked at each other to say we always get in these situations, don't we?
You sound like the dynamic duo. This is like Batman and Robin.
We were helping, and then we look up and we see about, I think it was like at least 6 to 10 police cars, you know, just surrounding the whole area. And obviously, what they didn't tell us then, but there was the person who had stabbed him was still
behind it.
Yeah, it was behind one of the buildings, you know, still behind one of the buildings where he came from. And then the ambulance, obviously, I was clock watching and seeing when the ambulance would show up. And, you know, everyone's like, so what's the time? I'm like, it's been this long, chasing that up. So it was very intense in that moment.
And it's strange. I know the feeling you're talking about, because strange. I used to be a photographer at one time, and probably some of the best photographs I never remember actually taking, because they were in such high intensity moments.
You don't think
that you just go onto autopilot, and then it's only afterwards, you know, have you taken a photograph or not? You know. So finally, I want to talk a little bit as well, because I know you've been one of the co-authors of Successful Mothers book as well.
We have,
and Marisha will kill me if I don't, if I don't talk about that at the same time.
We brought that along.
Absolutely. So, as you know, or may know, I'm a great follower and supporter of Successful Mothers as well. How important was it for you to tell your story?
I'll be honest, it's one of those things where you're telling it and you've never told it before. And it was almost like, you know, why would you be interested in what I have to say, you know? But when I read back to it, I think it kind of opens my eyes to what it takes to move from a country to a whole new place with new culture and start a brand new life. And I didn't only have to think of the perspective for myself, but I thought from my parents' perspective as well, because I was much younger. They were, you know, in their late 20s, early 30s, and it was a whole brand new life. So to me, it was really important to just show that, you know, you can come from difficulty and make your way into something that can be absolutely amazing. And that's why, and I know a lot of the stories in here are the same, where it shows struggle and then it shows the outcome, you know, is great. So for me, it was just as important.
It's what I call the Albanian DNA, you know. I mean, you can turn anything into success. You know, it's that sort of fighting spirit that goes back generations, and the history of Albania as well. Am I right in thinking you received some acknowledgement recently for something that you did as well? Something is telling me, did you get an award recently for?
Yes, we did. We was absolutely honoured and, you know, shocked as well, I think, that we received a Royal Humane Society award recently, which was absolutely amazing, and, you know, we're so honoured to receive that. But, you know, you do what you do because you care.
What was that for?
That was for the knife crime incident.
Okay.
It was actually Bedfordshire Police who put that through.
Yeah.
Okay.
We didn't really know. It was just the sort of thing where this. We knew about the award, but we recently received it. But it was we weren't expecting the actual award. It came out in the paper when it was announced, before we even knew anything.
Yeah.
So we had people calling up at 6 in the
morning. So you're the famous dynamic duo now, then.
But we've
got a reputation.
For the papers anyway. But we did have calls 6 in the morning. Have you seen this? I've seen what? I haven't seen anything. What's going on?
Yeah, it was all over the papers, and we had no idea that we was to be awarded the award at the time. So it came as quite a shock, and it said, you know, Bedfordshire Police had nominated us, and so then we had to speak to Bedfordshire Police, and it was just such an honour. And you know, you don't really think about these things. No, you do what you do because you care and you want to make a positive difference.
And also the detail, because they obviously investigated everything, looked at the scene, and said and kept up to date with the victim, and they said that he recovered fully.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So it was almost like, you know, okay, thanks for updating us. We did it because we didn't have a clue. We just did what we did and obviously carried on with what we were doing.
And it was funny because we only had 2 hours sleep that morning.
Gosh.
Because we'd done like the whole night, and then we turned up to be keynote speakers at an International Men's Day event.
But before we went on our night shift, we were actually at Bedfordshire Police doing training with children. So we went from Bedford, which is about 40-minute drive back to Luton because of Friday night traffic, and changed straight into shift, and then the next day we had to do it all over again. But we're so used to it. I know it sounds crazy,
Well,
but
you
we're
look
really
good on
used
it
to
anyway, my goodness.
We're very used to it. Sorry, slightly off topic. Back to this. Claire was the only English woman on here, which is
Yes.
Excellent. So you've both written
Yeah, the chapter.
How wonderful.
Our chapter
we wrote
was shared.
it. Yeah, we shared a chapter, and also the author actually mentioned that in the beginning of the book and dedicated that to us because it was such a unique aspect to our story.
Yeah.
Our relationship has been highlighted multiple times because of the uniqueness and
Obviously, culture difference that we have.
and you know.
But
it's
is
just
there?
Important.
Do you know? You know, the thing that got me about Albanians. A very quick story that I get offered and go to a lot of Albanian events. The first Albanian event, excuse me, that I went to was a talent show. 800 people turned up, and it was a children's talent show. And this is Albanian DNA for me. And I tell this story all the time. And this 2-year-old girl came out on stage by herself, 2 years old, and was shivering and shaking. And then the Albanian DNA kicked in, and she sang this song. But for me, my feeling is, that the values that Albanians have today, the family values especially, are the values and the family values that I experienced growing up. That's why I feel so comfortable with Albanians.
It's our morals and our values, regardless of our the differences we may have, because they might be black and white differences in all the other aspects, but what we believe in morally and what we value, which is obviously our families, that's what connected us so deeply on our first meeting. It has just grown and grown and grown and grown, and that's what we highlight in this book, because we shared a chapter and we highlight that especially because when we just naturally did it, but when somebody brought it up, we're like, oh yeah, actually it's quite interesting how we did do that together, so it is just wanted to highlight that, because even though I'm really grateful to be on here, and the fact that I share this chapter with Claire. I don't have any children. Is there anyone asking me?
No.
I'm like, when did you become a mother? I'm like, no. We're sharing a chapter. I'm not mothering. Don't say that.
I get that. Finally, how can people help you? Do you need funding? Do you need resources? And how can people get in touch with you as well?
Mm-hmm. So we're always looking to help and support where we can, and we're open to recruiting volunteers. If people want to come and volunteer and learn more about our community work, that would be fantastic. We do provide our services not just here in the UK but globally. If you needed mental health support or training, education, we do go and do schools education as well.
We do, we and lecture at the university as well, so that's another aspect of the education side of things. If anyone wants to do partnership work, for example, on mental health projects, services, whatever it be, we are more than happy. And if there is any funding available anywhere, we're more than happy to have a look at it.
Great. So how can people get in contact if they want to support you, say financially in some way? How can they do that? Do you have a website, for example?
We do, and we're all on all social media. So our website is meaningfuleducation.org.uk, and our Instagram is just Meaningful Education. So if you type it in, it will come up. And the same with Facebook, Twitter.
Meaningful Education.
So if you just type in our name on Facebook, Twitter, wherever it be, Meaningful Education, we do come up. So we're on there, and our website.
And you can purchase the book on Amazon.
Yeah.
So you can pop onto Amazon to purchase Activity Gurus, and it's also available on Kindle. So it's a great read, whether you're professional or non-professional.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Ladies, the dynamic duo. Thank you. I could talk to you all afternoon,
thank
but
you.
time has caught up with us
Thank you
again.
for having
so
us.
thank you so much, and I hope you'll come back again soon. Perhaps we can talk
Absolutely.
about some more about mental
Yeah.
health. I think it's a very
Yep,
important
absolutely.
issue to go with. So, well, that's the second half of the show. I would like to thank the two ladies this afternoon. I think it's been very, very important, especially during Carers Week, to actually talk about these types of issues as well. So for me, Ian Pelham Turner on ALB UK Television and positivebritain.co.uk and the Voice of London, it's goodbye for now. Have a great day. Please talk about this show and please share this interview at the same time. Take care and goodbye.